I'm Corey, and this is the Hardcore Skeptic Examines. Hey folks, for the third interview in my social justice series, I talked to Dustin Dark. Dustin got introduced to podcast listeners back in late November or early December when he went on Thomas Smith's show, Atheistically Speaking, back before he changed the name. Dustin and his friend Mike went on with Eli Bosnick and Thomas to talk about the problems with the left. Unfortunately, things didn't go very well in that conversation, and Dustin ended up with a bit of a bad reputation. Personally, I like Dustin. I think he's a stand-up guy. He thinks about what he wants to say and he says it well. I can't quite put my finger on it, but much of what Dustin says in this interview resonated more with me than similar arguments brought up by Randy in my last interview. I still fundamentally disagree with him, but he makes some very good points about some issues of concern on what he and others call the regressive left. Now, before I get into this interview, I want to say that I will have a few comments afterwards, but I'm going to try to keep it to a minimum because I told Dustin that I wouldn't interfere much with what people take away from his thoughts. That's going to be very difficult because I have a lot of notes, but I think that if I can restrain myself, I'm going to save it for the final commentary episode where I address the broader subject. You'll be able to see that he has a clear agenda in the interview, and I think that he achieves his goals and got his points across. And I didn't push back. I'm starting to realize that in these first couple interviews, instead of just saying okay or listening intently or just acknowledging that I was hearing what they were saying, I said right a lot. And I hope that people don't necessarily take from that I'm agreeing with their points. In this particular interview, there is a couple spots where I do agree with the last thing that Dustin said in a series of statements. And I don't know, it's possible that it could be construed that I agree with the entirety of the statement, but I'll leave that up to you to interpret how you will. I think my position is pretty clear in most of these cases. I want to mention at this point that in my quest for interviewees, I was desperately looking for people who take issue with social justice advocacy. I sent many messages out to different prominent skeptics who speak out against social justice or the regressive left, but I had no takers. I didn't even get anyone who would message. I couldn't even get anybody to message me back. And so I eventually went to my Facebook feed and put out a call to people who take issue with social justice. And while it didn't land me any prominent people, I think I got a good cross-section of the various criticisms. This is also a pretty good time to point out where my bias lies, in case you didn't already know. I consider myself pro-social justice. I'm far from perfect, but I've heard enough arguments for it, and they defeated my previous views against it. I'll elaborate more when I do my final commentary episode of the social justice series, but I want to declare my biases so that listeners know where I'm coming from. I was trying to be, and I am still trying to be as fair to the other side as possible, and trying to be harder on my side, because that's the way one gets at the best possible position, I think. I wanted to do that without being a jerk to anybody. So with that all out of the way, here's my interview with Dustin Dark of the Wayward Atheist podcast. Let's start off with an introduction. Okay. Who are you and what is social justice to you?
Okay, well, all right. Like I said right before we started recording, we're kind of walking a minefield here. So I'm glad you started on me, and I'm going to focus on just me for a second.
You bet.
Because and just the whole thing of just walking up and saying you have some sort of problem with social justice, two things are going to happen pretty quickly. Someone's going to go, oh, let's see what the bigot has to say. So I want to stop that right up front. And also, who is this white shitlord trying to tell me about what life is like? So I want to head those off a little bit. I'm from Alabama, which is one of the poorest states in Alabama. I'm from Birmingham, the west side of Birmingham, which is one of the most violent areas in the country to live. Very poor, not a lot. The city's crumbling. Right. Terribly, terribly, terribly bad. A lot of gang problems. I'm from a specific sub area called Wylam, which is, let's say, 95, 97% black. I'm mixed myself.
Okay.
Enough that people ask me what I am.
Right.
And they kind of decide, like, Puerto Rican or white if they want me to be, or lately I go with something like off-white. It's hard to categorize myself. But a little more specifically, I was born to parents that had drug problems. They lost custody of me and my brother when I was 2 and he was 4. My mother went on to have a heroin problem, prostitution, and jail time. I didn't know her. Right? I didn't know her at all. Right. Or my father, who was gone. I was adopted and I was born Dustin Dark, by the way. That's not a pseudonym.
Right.
I was a lot of people would think I'm just going for some kind of catchy internet name, but I was born Dustin Dark. Yeah. I was adopted when I was 7, though, so that's not my legal name. I was adopted by my mother's parents, and my legal last name was Green. By the way, I'm not hiding who I am either. Okay. And the people that adopted me were the father was sexually abusive to my mother, not to me and my brother, luckily, being a heterosexual man. And the mother had a lot of anger problems and violence problems, right? So that's my childhood and where I come from, right? I've been falsely arrested for drugs I didn't have. Right. I've had to prove I was a citizen so I could get out of jail. My point is, I have not had some cushy, privileged life.
Right.
And while I'm on that subject, Dave from my podcast, at the moment, he is a cis white middle-class man.
Right.
And I would say that my life has been more privileged than his.
Yeah. If people have listened to the various shows that he's been on explaining his background, he's had a pretty rough upbringing.
And if anyone's wondering, look up the Dave Edwards interview on the Sacrilege podcast on YouTube.
Yeah. Or on Brainstorm even.
I listened to that. And then he's doing another interview with us. They'll come out eventually. We got a lot of editing to do on it.
Right.
So he even took it easy on y'all's show. He's had a rough go. And I'm not here to get anyone to feel sad. I'm just saying he's a white dude that is self-employed and doing pretty well. Right. And he's not a privileged man. He earned what he has. Right. And that's, so one of the things I'm going to pick at tonight, specifically, and the reason I went in this vein, is the idea of white privilege. This ubiquitous white people have it easy on the sake of them being white. I think it's much more of a class issue. I think it's much more of a money issue than anything. And I'm also going to go after the idea that only white people can be racist, or that black people can't be racist towards white people. This power plus privilege equals racism equation that is, I understand that it has a use in academic circles and sociological discussions, but the way it's tossed around in common discussion today, I think is harmful, to put it kindly.
Yeah.
I don't think it leads anywhere productive. Right. There are memes floating around that says it's better to be a homeless white man than any black man in America. Right. Great. I've been homeless. I've been homeless twice. Right. I think not, sir.
I often think of the Chris Rock joke about how it's so good to be white that there's a white busboy who lives with his mom right now working in this auditorium that he's doing his show in, and who wouldn't trade places with me. And he says, and I'm rich.
I don't think that's true, though.
I mean, it's just a joke from Chris Rock.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, I get it's a joke from Chris Rock, and I see the humor in that. But there are people that believe that. And that belief is what I'm here to address. So I couldn't just let that slide by without saying, nah. So, and if we go through that too, there's this joke on the, and this is going to bring us to the terms. I don't know what to call each side.
Yeah.
Right. We've run out of words.
Yeah, that's right.
To call like these fractions of political movements. when I first started running into the type of ideas that bother me, I started calling them the authoritarian left, because there's this, you talk how I want you to talk.
Okay.
You talk when I want you to talk about, what subjects I want you to talk about, right? Based on whatever arbitrary thing I decide, skin color, sex, or sexual orientation,
right,
or something like that. So, but I do pretty good on that oppression scale, right? I mean, like I'm a colored man from
right.
A mixed colored man, so I get neither. I don't get the black community, I don't get the white community, I get the what are you community,
right?
And we're pretty far in between, and I would really be at the top if I were to start sucking some cock, and I'm thinking about it next year. We'll see how it goes. I might hit the jackpot, and I can have whatever conversation I want to have.
Right.
And here's the I made that joke for a few reasons, right? And clearly, I was joking at the end there, because today that's something that can get you fired from your job. That joke right there on Twitter.
Right. Right.
And I have a feeling you and I can both agree that that's a problem.
Yeah, I don't think anybody should be getting fired from their jobs for a joke on Twitter. I mean, I guess
right. So we can agree that that's a bit authoritarian.
Yeah.
That's a little bit out of hand. So you do recognize that there is that side to the left that's going on.
Yeah, I think there's a bit of nuance to that as well, right? But I mean, in general, I wouldn't want to see like I know plenty of racist guys where I work, and I wouldn't want to see any of them out of work just because I disagree with them and
sure,
have shitty
their
opinions.
Kids still have to eat.
That's right.
Well, here's the idea of punishing someone by taking away their means to provide for themselves and their family is kind of old. That was the idea behind thumb screws, right?
Right.
Now you can't work your field. Now you can't provide. We just skip the pain now, and we just take away the job.
Right.
So
yeah, it's not a great way to go about things.
No, it's not. So when I'm talking about authoritarian left, it's that I'm going to remake society in the way I think it should be, and I really think it's hard to see that in any other way besides authoritarian. You're trying to remake the world in your image. What?
Yeah. Well,
in the way you want it to be.
Right.
You want people to talk the way you think they should talk.
Yep.
About the things you think they should talk about. Okay, so that bothers me.
Okay.
That bothers me quite a bit. And the other side is of this, because it's kind of a two-sided, is the regressive left.
Right.
And I talked to your guest yesterday after he got off. He said that he spent a little time explaining to you that it was a descriptor.
Yeah.
Rather than a pejorative. And don't be wrong, it's a pejorative. It's a pejorative because they're trying for progress.
Yeah. Yeah.
But we think in a terribly wrong way.
It's often used as a pejorative, even if it is a descriptor. Like I think depending on who's using it, it comes across as a pejorative or a descriptor, or sometimes it comes across as inaccurate and sometimes it's good, but
right. It's according to situation. And to give an example of regressive movements on the left, there's a push for segregated dorms at UCLA.
Right. Yeah. Randy mentioned that yesterday.
Yeah, you can't do that. You absolutely can't do that. I live in Tuscaloosa now. I left the crumbling Birmingham, right? And I moved to Tuscaloosa. Do you know anything about history of Tuscaloosa? I know you're from Canada. So, okay. So about 50 years ago, the National Guard had to show up with guns so black kids could go to school here. Right. So I really know where these things end up when we start separating ourselves and start othering each other. Yeah. We go here, you go there.
Yeah.
And that's not something that I think we should be going down either.
Yeah. It does seem odd. Like the whole point of progress was so that nobody was being othered, right? Like that was the original kind of some of the point of the whole being on the left, is that we're all supposed to be people that are treated equally. Right.
Okay. And I know I'm kind of all over the place here, but it's a large thing I'm trying to describe here, and the words are so muddy that I feel like I need to lay some groundwork before I get into to really anything serious. And just to bounce another, what I would see as regressive would be there are some college campuses in the United States that had some policies where if a drunk man and a drunk woman have sex, the man committed rape and the woman's a victim. And I don't think that is equality. I don't think that's awarding the same agency.
Right.
I think it's almost like a protector of women. It's the opposite of feminism. It's chauvinist almost, right? It's telling women that they can't get drunk and have sex.
Right.
What if they want to get drunk and have sex? I want women to be able to get drunk and have sex if they want to, right? Like, well, here's the thing. I dated a girl for 4 years, and the main thing that kept us together is we would get high and fuck.
Right.
I wasn't raping her. I wasn't. The whole just no, right? And these ideas are very pervasive, and you come across them a whole lot. It's particularly when you're someone like me that goes around and pushes people on their ideas on the internet to see what they say and where they're coming from. You really come across this shit a whole lot. It's scary. It's scary to see it on my side, right? And to lay a little more groundwork about who I am and where I'm coming from in this, I'm thoroughly on the left, guys. And let me explain. I want to raise the minimum wage, right? I would like to completely redo the healthcare system, go for free healthcare like Canada or the UK has. Oh gosh, what else? Increase taxes on Wall Street, right? Pro-abortion, though I think we should encourage people to get abortions as early as possible. I'm not someone that's more abortions all the time. Everyone get abortions. Like, use protection, and if you have to get an abortion, get the early abortion for your physical reasons too. Like if you get a pill abortion rather than a surgical abortion, it's better for everyone involved.
Yep, for sure.
So that I'm very gay rights, go guys, suck all the dick you want, marry whoever you want. That's your thing. Do it. Have a good life. I don't want to start, but I don't want to divide us on these lines. It's ridiculous. It's, so where the big disagreement with me comes from is I have some principles that I've brought with me from when I was young, that really clash with the regressive and the alternative left. And the main one is how I judge people, how I talk to them, how I decide their worth, right? And there's only three things that I consider. And one of them is what their intentions is, and that matters the least, right? But at least you're trying to do something good, right? And I will extend that to the regressive and the authoritarian left. I think that we all have the same end in mind.
Right.
I think
everybody's kind of aiming for the best possible world, right?
Yes, we're all aiming for the best possible world. We're all aiming for equality. I think we have different definitions of what equality is. I'm not as bothered by inequality of outcome as much as most people. Okay, so the second thing that I judge people on is what their ideas are, right? Like what's the motivations behind their ideas too. And I look out for certain ideas that lead to tragedy, right? I mean, like Greek style tragedy. The end justifies the means.
Okay.
No. if I see someone working from that mindset, I have to be ultra skeptical of anything they're saying, right?
Right.
You're with me or you're against me.
Yeah, the hard line, eh?
That scares the shit out of me, my man.
Yeah,
that's culty, and that's and I hear that from time to time if I'm having a discussion with a feminist, and they're actually be rushing for the middle ground, trying to relate to me, and they'll say, well, at least we can agree that if you're not with me, you're against me. No, I can just not be involved. I can have the same goal and not like your method. I might like your method, but not like your goal.
Right.
I just might not like your face and don't want to deal with you. I don't have to be on your side. No one owes you anything like that.
Right.
No. And we talked about this in your show. Just because I don't call myself a feminist doesn't mean I'm not for equal rights.
Right.
I happen to not like the method you're going about. And personally, I grew up in that 90s grunge mindset, like don't label me and I'm not part of your group. Like, I'm a lone wolf. And like, but I can't shed it. I change a lot, but that sticks with me.
Right.
I almost cringe when I call myself an atheist because it's factual. Right.
Yep.
I beyond that, like you and I don't believe in God. That's the end of, what else do we have in common? Because that's nothing.
Yeah, no, that's an easy thing to just get over.
Yeah, we have come to a conclusion together. What's next?
Yeah, that's right.
And so go ahead.
I guess we never really got to it specifically, but what do you actually define as social justice or social justice movements?
Okay, so see, I'm not sure if social justice started as a pejorative too, and so I try not to use it at all, particularly because you guys I don't think understand what the insult is. Do you know what the insult is?
The whole social justice warrior thing.
The insult is that the two words are kind of diametrically opposed to each other. It doesn't make sense. It's like Led Zeppelin, right? What is social? Well, social implies groups, right? Groups of people, and justice is a reward punishment situation, right?
Right.
In my opinion, if you're rewarding and punishing groups, you're not bringing justice to the individual. You've actually destroyed the justice we have.
Well, isn't justice isn't justice built on a reward punishment system?
That's what I'm saying, right? Yeah. So. But how do you punish a group of people based on something like skin color or gender, right? How do you punish them and then call that justice?
Right.
There is no group guilt. If there's no group guilt, there cannot be group justice, right? The people who are guilty of something are the individuals who took part in it, not the people that look like them.
Right.
Not the people that agree with them on some things. Well, I mean, that's the insult. So I really don't. It's the, like I said, I'm out of words. It's the authoritarian and the regressive left, and I would call myself a classic liberal. Okay. So what they're being regressive against is the movements of the 60s towards individual and character, right? And those three things I described earlier, those are character. That's the content of your character.
Right.
When I hear Martin Luther King's speech and he says we should judge on the content of our character, not the color of our skin, that's what I take him to mean.
Right.
And I take that to heart. I take that to heart deeply. I don't care about what other things he said. I don't take it to heart because he's Martin Luther King. I take it to heart because that's the way I want to be, and I think that's right. I think that's justice. And I don't think that's why the left is moving towards right now, and it scares me.
It's interesting. So you don't think of like many of the conversations I've had, the social justice or pro-social justice side, or social justice warriors, whatever you want to call them, they say that social justice is the movement towards bringing equality amongst different groups. So you don't think that that's accurate?
I want once again, I think that's a good goal. Just like the goal of feminism is equality of the sexes, but that's not always what you see happening.
Right.
That's it. Once again, I agree with the goal. It's the methods.
Right.
Yes, I think that's a good thing. And once I do want to split a hair though about equality and equity. And what I mean is equality of opportunity. Okay. Compared to equality of outcome, right? Because the freer people are, the more you're allowed to just decide what you want to do and chase it. That's actually going to create a disparity, right? If everybody's bringing home the same money, that's unnatural. That's forced. Yeah. There's no way. That's forced. That has to be done from an outside force, right? So when you see a divide, it doesn't necessarily mean bigot, right? There can be a number of things that lead to that disparity. Right. So that's not necessarily an inequality of opportunity.
Okay.
So what I want to see the left doing is looking out for poor people, period.
Right. Okay.
Right. Poor people, period. I don't care if you're gay. I don't care if you're minority. I don't care if you're white. We want upward mobility for everyone. Right. And I think if that's the goal, right, we can't do much to help. Like if there's some bigot hiring people that doesn't want to hire you for some reason, you screaming in the streets not fixing that. Right. What we need to do is to make sure that person gets as many of those interviews as possible and reduces the chance of finding that bigot. Right. So in the United States, stop funding public schooling through income taxes. That means poor people have poor schools.
Right.
Stop. Right. Is that meant as a racist policy? I think it's meant as a poor policy, right? The United States has always had very deep class differences, just like we've had very deep race differences.
Right.
And the thing is, it holds down poor people like me, which I never went to a real school, by the way. I only went to churches. I never went to public school.
Oh, jeez.
Right. I never went to a school that didn't have shared classrooms.
Right.
All right. It was 3rd and 4th grade at one time, which I guess gives you a peek into the future. You got to know what's coming next.
Yeah, that's right.
So we're kind of getting in the weeds here,
Yeah, a little bit.
So kind of, but not really, because we have to define these terms so that we know what we're talking about. We have to define what exactly my problem is and where I'm coming from. And I'm not just some white fucking rich douchebag telling people how to live their fucking lives.
For sure.
Okay. So, all right. I think we've moved past there. Have I said anything crazy or bigoted or ridiculous? Like keep me in check, my man.
Hey, well, no, I don't think you've said anything too out of control. I mean, I think you've said some things that make me raise my eyebrows and make me wonder a little bit more about that. Like, I might be, like, I mean, I can't say you've said anything bigoted, but I'm like, I've often stepped back from calling people bigots, even if they might be like, so I don't know. I think you've been fair. I think you've been fair.
That's what I'm asking you, right? I think you're a fair guy. The reason I'm having this conversation with you is I've watched you a little bit, and I haven't seen you call someone a bigot.
Yeah,
I've seen you be very reasonable and measured with people, and that's why I felt like this is a conversation that I can have here, right? This is, by the way, a conversation. What we're about to get into, a kind of an inequality between the left and the right. This is a conversation I was expecting to try to have with Thomas Smith and Eli Bosnick. Ha 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 ha.
It didn't work out that way.
No. Well, when you start out pissing on my shoes and telling me I'm a bad person at the same time, that's a rough start.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I digress even more.
So right. I guess kind of to take it back to the social justice or the movement of whatever we're calling it. How do you think movements like Black Lives Matter or the LGBTQ or feminism group into that?
How do they group into that?
How do they fall? Do you think there's a hierarchy, or do you think that there's like an oppression Olympics, like Dave Rubin likes to say?
Well, that was the joke I made earlier, right? I mean, I'm sort of brown. I'm poor. I've had my struggle. If I started sucking cock, I'd be winning the Olympics. Like that was the joke. I do see. I mean, yeah. Do I think it runs the movement? That's according to which particular movement and who's talking. Like, the thing is, they're so amorphous. And who's the leader again? Black Lives Matter is easier to pin down than feminism, right? Because the leaders of feminism are long dead, and now it's just whoever decides to call himself a feminist leader, right? Who decides to tune in and give a fuck is
whoever
all that
gains
matters
the most
now.
Followers on Twitter,
right? Everyday feminism, yes, they go by that hierarchy,
right?
Yeah, they do.
Okay.
Black Lives Matter has been known to tell white people to stand in the back during their marches. Do you think they have a hierarchy? Well, I think that's a high standard. Like, the idea that if we're talking about black issues, a white man shouldn't talk about it because he doesn't understand. That's a hierarchy.
No, I hear what you're saying.
Your opinion is worth less because of your skin color.
Yeah, no, that's fair. I wonder if there's not a certain amount of warrant to that, though. Like, can a white person necessarily speak to the issues that a black person is facing?
Well, that's according to that person's experiences. It's less on skin color and more about where they're from. I think I can talk a fair amount about the black experience because I was engulfed in it. Right. Like I've lived on streets where half the houses are empty, and the car wash on the corner is run by a heroin dealer that has his phone number spray painted 6 feet tall on the side of it. Right. I know that life where you don't know if you should be more concerned about the cops or the gangs. Right. I'm not black. I may have some black, like, it's confusing. Who cares? But to me, no, it doesn't matter. Your experiences matter. Once again, it goes back to what is your character? What is your idea? What are your actions? And I don't think I got to the third thing before we got that. That's the thing. Your actions, right? Right. What are your intentions? What are your ideas? What are your actions? If your ideas matter, like let's hear them out. Let's not shut them down because they're white. What if that guy had the fucking answer? What if the answer is like I said, step one, stop funding schools through property tax. Number two is to end the drug war completely, legalize all drugs, and starve out the gangs. Right. Because if you don't think gangs are the major problem in black communities, like for one, they leach kids out of the school system.
Right.
For two, they bring all the violence. For three, they shut down all the businesses. For four, they kill the fuck out of everybody there. Right.
So gangs are a pretty big deal.
Well, my shitty, 2 through 14, A through Q block city had its own gang, the Wyland Boys, and they had giant, you get it? And they had giant like Warner Brothers tattoo.
Oh, okay.
Like the symbol. You see? And I used to buy weed from the student, and I was like, so man, when did you graduate? Man, the town has like 70% dropout rate. He looked at me like I was fucking crazy. Right. And a very nice school, actually. They took a lot of money, built a very nice school, and no one showed up.
Oh, jeez.
I won't say no one, a significantly low amount of the people actually showed up to go to that school. They just don't care. It's not in the culture. I don't know how to put it. If those are the problems and the only people we're allowed to listen to is Black Lives Matter, we will not solve the problems.
It's interesting.
Right? Just because they're black doesn't mean they have the fucking answer, man. It means they're black.
True.
That's the end of what it means. There's no further.
That's true. Yeah. It just means that a person's skin color is
and they have a higher likelihood of having sickle cell. Like that's
right.
That's the end of it.
Yeah.
So nothing else matters.
Yeah.
And I will not take part in a movement that makes that the key issue.
I wonder though, like, cause from my perspective, I have a totally different experience. Like I was never immersed in that life. So for me, I have to listen to somebody like yourself or somebody who has lived in that culture, that life, so that I can hear what they're saying rather than constantly asserting my own opinions. Right. Like I can empathize with these things. I can try and understand them, but I haven't experienced them. So it's hard for me to know exactly what they're saying or what they've dealt with.
Yeah. So the problem here is a lack of nuance.
Right.
On their side. You have to be very specific about what you don't want. You can't just say white people shut up. Which did you see the lady running for DNC? I think it's DNC chair. She said that her job would be to shut down white people in the conversation, let them know that it's not their turn to talk.
Oh, really? No, I didn't see that.
Yeah. Can you imagine how hard Richard Spencer's dick got when he heard that?
Oh yeah, no kidding. Hey, he would love that.
Like, so let's go ahead and throw that as regressive, right? We're judging people by their color and deciding whether or not they have a voice. Negative. I cannot get behind that.
Right.
All right. And while I want to talk about something else first, but while we're on this, you know who Symone Sanders is?
Nah, it doesn't ring a bell.
That's fine. She was Bernie Sanders, one of his major campaign managers. Do you remember? I don't know how closely you follow the American elections, but I think we're awesome, so I assume you did.
Well, I followed them fairly closely, but I mean, there's always stuff I miss. So
right. So Bernie had a speech in Washington State, and 2 Black Lives Matter members shut down the event. Do you remember that?
Yep.
Okay. So his response was to hire Symone Sanders, which is a large Black Lives Matter, supporter and political activist. And now that his campaign is over and they've parted ways, she does a lot of appearances on CNN and talks about race issues, right?
Okay.
And every time, I swear to God, every time she goes on CNN, another 500 people go to the Daily Stormer because she just said, do you remember in Chicago right after the election, a Trump supporter got his car stolen and he got beat up in the streets while they were yelling. Yep. Okay. Her response was boohoo white people. That was her response on CNN. Right. I'm not sure his skin color gets him his car back or his ass unbeaten.
Nope. That's right.
Right. Like you having a nice job in Canada or someone, in Germany having a nice has shit all to do with the situation. Right. Yeah. You just shit on a poor person that was abused because of his skin color.
Right.
Right. So, and this kind of moves into my next thing. Black people can totally be racist. Stop saying they can't.
Yeah.
That was racist. That was racist of her.
That's something that Randy talked about yesterday, was that how the different uses of the word racism.
Yes. And to me, I think the point of the shift of the definition is to allow themselves to be as mean or racist or bigoted as they want. And they're admit, well, I'm being prejudiced, but I'm not being racist, because the word racist has a psychological trigger in the West, right?
Right.
You would rather pedophile is slightly worse than racist, let's say. And it will ruin your life. right? So they want to make sure they can't get caught in it because they have some racist shit to say real quick, right? And the same thing with feminism. They would really like to shit on men and talk about how different they are while they're saying that men and women are are the same. So they need this guard. And what it leads to is nothing but harmful and divisive conversations. Never once have I heard that formula brought up and a constructive conversation follow. Never. How can you?
Yeah.
I can say whatever the fuck I want to you, and it is kosher, you bigot. Like you can't have a conversation with that.
Yeah.
We have to stop. And I want to read you an article. I've talked about where I'm from in Birmingham a little bit. I have this pulled up on my computer.
Sure.
And we'll go back to Symone Sanders in a little bit. To me, this shows how racism can seep into politics very easily on the black side, just as easy as it can on the white side. And the author of this is John Archibald. He's a very well known on left journalist from Birmingham, and we're reading from AO.com, which is a left leaning website, one of the only left leaning news sites in Alabama.
Okay.
So I'm going to give this a quick read. I've never seen anything like this. I've covered hurricanes and tornadoes that took whole families and neighborhoods. I've covered murders and bombings and South American soccer games, but nothing really like this. I've seen a mayor walk the streets in shackles. I've watched mayors and governors hauled to jail. I've covered peaceful protesters and riots. I've seen families mourn the deaths of their innocents and guilty men die in the electric chair. But I've seen nothing quite like the event at Birmingham City Hall this week. Nothing that reached into my heart to snatch the shreds of hope that hide there. Nothing that took my words and left me with only sadness for my city, for my species. This is a little hard for me, sorry.
Yeah.
I barely know what to say or how to say it. For what took place in the city council chambers, and the Birmingham City Council is our legislative branch. Okay. And of course, the mayor is going to be the executive.
Right.
At a Thursday town hall to discuss proposed changes to the Birmingham Mayor City Council Act that would be blamed on the mayor or the council. It's not as simple as a power play, nor as easy as to define as greed or politics or business as usual. But that's not what this is about. It was a sign of a divide so deep and wide, I do not know if it can be crossed. It was a time so slanderous and inflammatory, I hesitate to repeat it. A man called the governor a homemonger and demanded the mayor, William Bell, apologize for having people shot. That's a declaration about the police in Birmingham shooting people. Black mayor, by the way, black city council.
Okay.
And he got applause. Resident after resident stood to complain loudly, not so much about the rift between the mayor and council, not much about the failure of schools to give Birmingham students an adequate shot at success in the wide world, not about increasing violence and crime in a city that is historically high in these things. The complaint was about white people. That development in the city put Birmingham in danger of drawing more of them. White supremacists run Birmingham because gentrification runs Birmingham, one speaker said, adding that Mayor Bell is the puppet of white people. By the way, when he ran for the mayor, their advertisements ran saying that he was controlled by the evil men over the hill. And that's a reference to white cities to the east of Birmingham.
Okay.
Another argued that Birmingham suffers from neighborhoods like Avondale's boom. Birmingham should not be allowed to gentrify, she said. Avondale, they invested and built some businesses and it's a very nice mixed neighborhood, white people, black people. It's a nice place to live and not too terribly expensive either. Another came right out and warned that if development continues, a white mayor will be elected and everything fought for in the 1960s will be for naught. And that place in my heart where I stored the hope emptied. How do we get beyond this? It was 53 years and one day since Martin Luther King wrote from a Birmingham jail that we are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny. 53 years to the day, and residents in the cradle of the movement pulled the thread, and the words of King unraveled. And I can't even blame the mayor or the council. Council President Jonathan Austin warned that Town Hall was not the place to attack people. He was answered with boos. Mayor Bell begun what seemed the most heartfelt and compelling comments I have ever heard him speak. The civil rights movement was not about creating us against them, he began. But he was interrupted by activist Frank Matthews, and the moment was lost. Bell did go on to explain that he must represent all people. Y'all didn't vote me to be black mayor of the black folks, he said. And you could see pain as he described how hard it is to hear that he is not black enough for Birmingham. They're calling him a coon. These are hard things for us all to hear. These are hard things to write, for I surely will say them badly. The city cannot survive with fear of progress. Where do we go in a city that cannot agree revitalization of neighborhoods are preferable to decaying ones? Remember I mentioned that half of the town was empty.
Right.
I understand not going into a full town and fixing it, right? And running all the people off. But Detroit needs to be fixed.
Right.
And you can't have racism stopping the repair. Birmingham was the magic city. Now it's disappeared as fast as it showed up. Anyway, all who live in the city, who raise children in it, or buy homes in it, or simply choose to live their lives in it, are investors in the city. And as the city proposed, so does that investment. As the city prospers, so does that investment. I think you get the point of this article and where it's going. They have power. All right. Even with that equation, they have power. They have prejudice. That is racism, no matter how you cut it.
Right.
All right. That's and here's the thing, man. I'm from Birmingham. I grew up there. This article come out a year ago, and I don't go back unless it's to see my mother, because frankly, I'm not welcome. Right. And that's where making every disparity or disagreement about racism has created this. Right. You can't keep telling them that America is a white supremacist nation and not expect this to come. It's going to. And if someone could explain to me how a majority white country that was a white nationalist elects a black man twice, that we have racists in our country. We are not a racist country. Right. We have rapists in our country. We are not a rapist country. All right. We have and the more this happens, and how much you think this affected Alabama's vote? This was big news. We were projected 99% for Trump, man.
Is that right?
Right. Yeah. Like I was asked by Thomas, like, who'd you vote for? Who gives a fuck who I voted for? It literally didn't matter. Right. We were going Trump, my man.
Yeah.
There was nothing. I literally went out and handed out like applications for voting, just knowing I was just pissing in the wind.
Right.
Because you have to try. How do I fix this? How do I have a discussion with these people? This is the left. This is the Democratic Party. These are Democratic voters. This is the left. This is authoritarian. This is regressive. This is the left, a portion of the left in the United States. So I think we can put to rest that there's no such thing as the regressive or the authoritarian left in the United States.
Right.
All right. That's all right. We have nailed that coffin shut. And I think I've also made a pretty solid point that anyone is capable of racism. All races are capable of the same emotion and psychological states, guys, because we're and hold on to your pants, equal. Right, like they are capable of everything we're capable of, and to think they're not is called or to think that they need extra help is called the soft bigotry of low expectations. I disagree with everything that Bush ever said except for that line right there.
Right,
that's a real thing. Oh look these poor coloreds.
Right.
They need a hand. They need a hand. Right. When I think that we need to stop racist witch hunts and actually try to fix the fucking problems and take any good idea from any source, right? And we need to have healthy conversations, or this is only going to get worse. The divide is only going to get worse.
That seems fair. That seems like a fair statement to me.
And one more thing, and I think I'm kind of wrapping up here. This is most of what I've proven, most of the points I come to prove. I feel like I did an all right job of communicating myself here. Yeah. The lady we're talking about earlier that boo-hooed the white man that was assaulted. She also very recently said that the Democratic Party does not need white men in leadership. And once again, if you think Spencer's dick didn't get rock hard, man. I go to daily stormtrooper, right? I follow Antifa groups. I follow alt-right groups. And some of them I interact, and some of them I just listen so I can see them in their natural environment when they think they're not being watched. Right. So I see what's going on. So that I see what's going on. And, and I guess there's one more point I'll make after this. She called for the ethno-purity of one of the leadership of one of the two parties in my country.
Right.
Now's the time to shit yourself. I don't care what the race is, man. Once again, that's beside the point to me. A political figure in the United States called for the ethno-purity of one of our two parties in the leadership. Once again, I don't want to oversell this. In the leadership of the Democratic Party, we don't need white people leading.
Right.
And it didn't. And the only place that makes the news is fucking Stormfront or Sargon of Akkad or some shit like that, right?
Right.
And it just gives them members. That's all it does.
It's interesting.
Right. And have you ever listened to I'm forgetting his name now, Spencer. What's his first name?
Richard Spencer.
Have you ever listened to Richard Spencer?
Not much. I've seen a couple of his talks, but
well, know your enemy, my man. And that's why I follow these groups.
Right.
He is my enemy, so I want to know everything that I can about him. So I watch his speeches.
Right.
And this is what he says. And I really want you to take this time and think about it. And he says this everywhere he goes. What he's trying to do is get white people involved in identity politics. Right? That's it. And what that is, as we've been talking, racism. It's getting together as a group and working together, and everyone's shitting themselves. Right. As we get closer and closer to the minority, that's going to happen. And the more racial tension is present as we move into identity politics, because we have to, right? And to a certain extent, if you're the minority, you kind of have to. That's why we let them do it.
Right.
More and more white people are going to want to have their own identity politics. The more cruelty is being thrown their way from other groups, right? If you're being told that, I don't care if you're fucking homeless, you're privileged. Why don't you? Do you see how that would motivate people to go to the alt-right and say, I'll tell you what, man, they don't want me.
Right.
They don't care. They don't want to listen. They don't care if I get a job. They don't care if I have a voice. They don't care about my solution to problems. What do you guys think? Well, white brother, we'd love to hear.
Right.
So you're just, and that's when I say that there's like this reverb effect, that's what's happening. You can't fight racism with racism. You get racism.
Yeah.
Now you have more racism.
Yeah, that's fair.
Right. I
wonder though, does it seem like that's the loudest or the majority of the voices in minority groups, or like in Black Lives Matter, or like these voices that
they're certainly the loudest.
Are they? Do you think they're the majority?
Do I think they're the majority? I think they are very highly engaged for the small group that it is. I think they're a minority, but that doesn't matter, right? The Nazis were a minority in Germany, and they ran that bitch.
Yep.
So that doesn't matter.
Ultimately, I guess it's the message and how it reverberates with other people, right?
And it's also how much they're trying and how much effort. Like there is a concerted effort from the left to deconstruct our society, right? Smash patriarchy.
Right.
Okay. So they're actively going out and trying to change it, right? So a small group working together can get a lot done. So I'm less concerned about how many of them there are, and I'm more concerned about whether or not Anita Sarkeesian is at the UN conference talking about making the internet a safe space. Now, I can agree with the use of safe spaces, but you get your fucking hands off my internet. You don't touch it, right? Like, no. So that bothers me because they're getting platforms. Once again, I wouldn't care. Eli gave me this, and I hate to keep going to that podcast, but this was the ideas that I was trying to get to, and obviously I never did, right?
Right.
He planted that flag. All you're going to be giving me is individuals acting badly. I think I've shown you some groups tonight. I think CNN welcoming this lady over and over is a group of people, a group of very rich people that have control over a certain portion of the culture, actually.
I guess the question is, like, how much impact can these individuals behaving badly have? Like, even if it is
Well, right now in the United States, I would not go to I'm not going to protest right now. I'm not, but because whether I'm on the right or the left, the chance of someone showing up and macing me or beating the fuck out of somebody I'm there with is higher than their chance of getting arrested. I feel like whether you're protesting Trump and Antifa shows up, or you're protesting Milo peacefully, which I support, and an Antifa shows up, or you're protesting M103 in Canada peacefully and Antifa shows up and it turns violent. You know, like they have effectively robbed me of my will to protest at the moment. It's gonna have to be some real deep shit before I take to the streets.
Right.
Real deep shit. And I used to protest fairly often. And frankly, when I go, I have to consider, I'm not saying I would, I have to consider, do I need a weapon?
Right.
Right. There was an Antifa man shot in California at a Milo event. Did you know about that?
Yeah, I read about that.
Yeah, you can't attack people, dude. You're just shot in America. We got guns, and now and now they know you're going to show up and want to fight.
Right.
And you're fighting right wing people.
Yeah.
They have guns.
So they definitely have guns.
I'm on the lleft. I have guns.
Right.
Because this is Alabama. Like, I know a guy that blew his finger off making hand grenades. Like, start shit here.
Right.
It will devolve quickly. Like, there hasn't been an Antifa event here. Man, it'll go bad here. Dear sweet God. Anyway, I think I've made my points. So I'm not sure where to go with this. Do you have any questions?
Well, sure. I can roll with this a little bit. I mean, we've talked a lot about racism and racism on the left, but I guess to wrap it up, I'll ask you a couple questions here. So, what is something that you wish everybody would realize about social justice or whatever? Is it that it can be a racist movement, or it can be a sexist movement, or is there something else that you think is more important that people need to realize about social justice?
The first thing is, yes, I think we need to realize that every individual is capable of racism, period. Right. And you need to keep check on yourself no matter what your skin color is. Right. When we give people a break, it encourages them to chase those feelings that come fairly natural to people. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
Tribalism is very natural, and we have to keep it in check. And giving them a ticket to blow money, man, to just blow their prejudice all they want to, that's not healthy. So, yes, I think if the left were to stop going on race lines and be more of a class movement, look out for the working class, because that's what won the Republicans the election.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And frankly, until they do, I'm not sure they're ever going to have a majority control of anything again. We're a majority white country, man. If you're telling white people, fuck yourself, why are they voting for you?
That seems like a fair criticism.
Yeah, everybody goes out and votes for their own well-being, right? You vote on your issues.
Right.
You vote on what you think is going to be best for you. That's what everyone does. Why would you expect them to vote on other people's issues?
Yeah,
that's to me that's my God. You're what's the word? You feel like you're owed some shit, man. You think someone owes you your vote because of your color, or your gender, or your sexuality? That's that is the most fundamental of rights, my man. I vote for who I want to.
Right. Yeah, and I think that part of the reason that Trump won, I talked about this with Randy the other day too, was that Trump was the only one talking about the jobs that people in the middle of the country were missing. And it seemed like the Democrats weren't covering that. Like, even though Trump's full of shit and can't fix what he said he could,
at least he's saying he's going to try.
He was saying that he was going to try. Exactly.
Yeah. So we actually agree a lot. It's an abandonment of the working class, and particularly of white working class, particularly, right? And there's this idea of, look. I get that you're losing your job, but there's this greater good. They don't give a fuck about your greater good. They got hungry kids, and frankly, they're so depressed that they're hooked on pain pills.
Right.
Like, it's a mess. Like, poor white America, like poor black America is the inner city. Poor white America is like Appalachia, man.
Right.
It's rough, my man. It is not a place to be right now.
Yeah.
Because they don't even have the same social setup because it's so spread out.
Yeah.
And anyway.
Okay. And kind of an alternative question. If you had to criticize the people who you agree with, like, or the people who criticize social justice, what would be something you would say, criticize about that?
Stop making fun of them.
Yeah.
Stop. Yeah. Well, it's really hard. I don't want to say my side and your side, but let's do it just so everyone
Sure,
understands.
yeah.
On my side, we're too condescending, and because frankly, from our perspective, you look like petulant children throwing a temper tantrum, right? It's hard to have an adult conversation with someone that seems to be acting like a child. The natural reaction is just like, "Oh, fuck yourself,"
right?
So we got to stop that. And on the other side, you stop thinking everyone that disagrees with you is a bigot. to go on that side again. Stop. They disagree with you. Find out why. Maybe it's bigotry. Probably they disagree with you.
Maybe there's more to it than that.
Yeah. Well, I have problems with Black Lives Matter, and you would have a trouble finding me ever saying anything close to racist. Like I've dated outside of whatever ambiguous race I might be. I mean, I guess technically every time it is, right?
It's also always within, isn't it?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, it's shotgun of. So yeah, that would be my advice about calm down.
Yeah, we
agree on almost everything.
Right. Yeah.
Good God. We there's no God. We help the lower class. Like it never ends what we agree on. We disagree on methods.
Yeah, and that's where it seems that everybody gets hung up.
Yeah. Yes.
So.
And some big ideas. Look, and here's if you're pushing for equality of outcome, I am against you because I don't see how you're going to do that without forcing it. Like let's have a real life, really obvious example. You're not going to have an equal racial spread out in the NBA.
Right.
You're not going to. And if you try to, well, I want to be an NBA player and I deserve it. Like the NBA is going to suck. It's going to be terrible. It's going to be terrible if you, right? What you're going to get is you're not going to get the best people for the job, for one. Right. No one's going to want to watch it because they know it's not the best people for the job. They feel like it's not fair and it's not a real competition. So why give a fuck? So just because there's a difference of outcome, right? Just because the NBA is mostly black doesn't mean they're bigoted against white people, right?
Yeah.
There's almost there's and as far as that goes, there's almost never one reason things are the way they are. Right. Stop looking for simple solutions and simple motivation.
Yeah.
Everything is multidimensional and very complex.
For sure.
One data point is never the answer. Right. One viewpoint is never the full story. Yeah. So stop thinking it is. Listen to each other. Do what me and Corey are doing.
Have a conversation. Right on, man. I think unless there's something, I guess, plug away.
Okay. Well, I'm the newest member to the Wayward Atheist podcast. So you want to find us at Spreaker.com/user/Wayward Atheists with an S, or you can just go to Spreaker.com and search Wayward Atheist. Google us, Wayward Atheist, and you'll find all of our stuff. Follow us on Facebook. Join our Facebook group. Send us a message. Just come. Just bring it, guys. Bring it. Bring your conversation. Bring your ideas. Bring your ears. Let's do this.
Right on.
All right.
Thanks, man.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, so that's the end of the interview. I hope that you enjoyed it and that one way or the other you got something out of that discussion. I enjoyed talking to Dustin, even if I do disagree with him on a pretty fundamental level, I think. I mean, we agree, he said we agree on many things, but on issues of racism, it seems like we're on opposite ends of the spectrum. I want to touch on just a few small things. I don't want to take any more time than necessary, and I don't want to spend a lot of time arguing with somebody who isn't here, and I just provided his perspective, and I want to kind of leave it at that. Much of what he said gets addressed in future interviews. So that's where I'm going to leave most of it. I want to touch on a couple things, and these will get addressed a little more in depth in my final commentary episode. So social justice, he took issue with the term social justice, said that it was a pejorative, when really, even if one goes by some stricter dictionary definitions, you can still find room for social justice to be defined as the striving for a just society or a fair society. So I kind of went through a couple definitions. I went looking, and basically what I found was that there's lots of leeway there. The word justice can mean the quality of having of being just or fair. And if you apply that to society or social justice is a fair or just society or the striving for such. So there's that. Yeah, other than that, much of this I don't want to touch on. He talked a little bit about his discussion with Thomas Smith and Eli Bosnick. I'm a big fan of Eli Bosnick and Thomas Smith, and as much as I like those two guys, I think that Dustin kind of didn't get a fair shake in that interview or that episode of Atheistically Speaking. I could probably provide a link if people want, though it's not the best. And Mike, Dustin's friend, took much of the time away as well. There was one thing there that Eli Bosnick said that much of these arguments are resting on examples of individuals behaving badly. And Dustin tried very hard in this interview to dispute that. But quite honestly, I don't think he did a good job of proving that it was anything but maybe not individuals, but like small groups, even small branches of larger groups. Like, I think that these, even the article from, I think it was AL.com, he said it was written by John Archibald on the city politics, and the overzealous activists in the city council meeting were just that, overzealous. And Dustin tried to explain it as though they had power, but they didn't. They're activists. These activists are not the ones with power. The mayor is the one with power. Even if he's getting emotional, even if he's feeling hurt by what they're saying, and even if he's feeling like this situation is being overwhelmed by these activists in a very real sense, they are acting out of a lack of power. That's why they're acting the way they are acting, because they don't have real power. You can't look at a meeting and say, oh, well, these people yelled over top of those people, therefore they had power. No, the mayor has real power. The yellers yelled and disrupted a meeting. That's not power. I don't know what you even call that, but it's not power. I was just saying, like, that this relates to that discussion in that way. There's a couple other points, like the things that Symone Sanders said were taken out of context, or not given as the whole thing. I'm not going to read the quotes, but basically Symone Sanders, when she said that we don't need white people leading the Democratic Party right now, she was talking about an increase in diversity in the leadership and throughout the entire party. She wanted to see more young people and more people of color. And that's fair. And maybe she didn't word it right, but you can't take that quote and honestly say that that's what she meant. Like, Dustin seemed to think that she meant she wants ethno purity in the leadership of the Democratic Party. And that's not what she even said. That's just not it. And it's a total misrepresentation of what she said. And Dustin's point was, well, here's this terrible thing that she said, and the only place that this is covered is on something like Sargon of Akkad or Stormfront. And the reason that the only place this is covered on is Sargon of Akkad or Stormfront is because it's total horseshit. Like, it's really not what she meant. And anybody who even Googles it can find that out. So we did touch on a couple other things. The UCLA segregated housing issue, not segregated housing. It's a housing with themed in such a way that is designed for black lives, not black lives, but people facing issues because they're black, or black issues. It's themed around these issues that black people face more than white people face, or maybe white people never face. So there's that. That's simply, like, I've got a couple links here. Collegefix.com is this a conservative website that takes stories about college campuses and they present them in the way they present them. And then, but I've got another link from SGVU Tribune and Snopes.com. It's not segregated housing. It's simply not. And then we talked a bit about rape charges while drunk, when both members are drunk. It's hard to find anything legitimate. Like, I found some stuff from Quora discussing what it means if both people are drunk. I'll provide links for that. So Symone Sanders, UCLA segregated housing, rape charges. I Googled this just because it was interesting. Were the Nazis a minority in Germany? Because we kind of touched on it. And it seems like they won the election by a minority. They had 49.3% of the vote, and they needed another party to team up with them in order to take the majority power. And then after that, it looks like Hitler enacted basically a situation where he had dictator-like powers. So, or the powers of a dictator. So then there was also an Antifa person shot at a Milo event in the day of the inauguration. I have a link to that. I wrote a bunch of notes here because as I'm listening to Dustin talk, I'm writing down things, but ultimately, I think most of this stuff will get touched on in future episodes, future interviews, because I took a lot of what Dustin said and what Randy said, and I turned those things into questions or I tried to in my amateurish way. And I asked my pro social justice guests these questions in the best way I could. So there's that. And then, so that's it for now. Thanks for listening. You can check out Dustin's podcast at The Wayward Atheists at Spreaker.com/user/waywardatheists, or you can check them out on iTunes, Stitcher, or your favorite podcatcher. You can find more of these episodes at Spreaker.com/show/The Hardcore Skeptic Examines. You can find me on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, and just about anywhere else you can find podcasts. Make sure to follow me on Twitter at Hardcore Skeptic, or like my Facebook page, Facebook.com/Hardcore Skeptic. If you want to support me, you can go become a patron at patreon.com/hardcore skeptic. More income makes doing this a lot easier. So remember to check out my other shows, the Brainstorm Podcast and Positively Skeptical. You can find show notes and links to that stuff at thebrainstormpodcast.com and brainstormblog.net. If you want me to include these episodes in the regular Brainstorm feed, then maybe shoot me a message. Let me know. If you think that these are better off on their own, then let me know that. If you like these, if you want me to change up something, just anything, any reason to get in touch with me, you can get in touch with me at mail@brainstormblog.net or message me on Facebook. Contact me on Twitter. I'm open to all kinds of feedback. I would love to see some comments on the Spreaker site. If people listen on Spreaker, that would be ideal for me. Or maybe some ratings and reviews. Like, I know I don't have a ton of listeners to this podcast right now, but some ratings and reviews would be very cool. I'm apologizing to my patrons right now because this is coming out like a few hours. It's going to be a matter of hours before it goes to the regular feed. And then I got to start plugging away at my next interview with Edwin. It's, it's been a rough couple weeks, so I haven't had the motivation to work on things as much. I'm just glad that I'm getting this out on time. So thanks again, everybody, for listening. I hope you have a good one, and remember, the truth matters.